What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai, an extension of Anime Senpai PH channel. All pieces of information are derived from the light novel. In today's video, we will continue Chapter 1, Volume 8 of the light novel, entitled Reconciliation and Agreement. This video is the third part of Chapter 1 in our Tensura spoiler video series. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, feel free to check out the links in the description below. Now, let's get to the video. Rimuru asked Luminus what about Veldora. Luminus said that she wouldn't forgive him. That much was certain. She had come here today to atone for what her servants had done. In deference to Rimuru, she would give the lizard his full punishment another day. She's just calling him straight Rimuru. He thought she would act more high and mighty, but Rimuru guessed she's a lot more unaffected than that. Rimuru was thinking about how he might just get along with her when Veldora started acting out again. And Luminus took the bait, of course. Veldora heard it and insisted that he'd had more than enough punishment. Luminus told him to shut up, since she had already given him her concessions. She stressed that if Veldora would prefer, they could settle this right here. Veldora laughed and said, "Very well," and asked Luminus to allow him to show her the sheer scale of his might. They fought like cats and dogs. Rimuru wasn't so sure they were enemies at all, really. Maybe the term frenemies was invented to describe this. Rimuru told Veldora to stop it because violent rages weren't allowed within city limits, calling him idiot. Rimuru had to put his foot down, otherwise they would be apt to tear the whole place down. Luminus, at least, seemed to be happy, no doubt appreciating all the magical energy she had sacked out of Veldora's body. It seemed like she was letting bygones be bygones for now. So maybe it was best not to needlessly prod her. If she's joining in the party, it's better to give her the time of her life, Rimuru thought. Rimuru announced that about this party, he wouldn't expect the kind of first-class dining they'd get at Walpurgis, so he asked them if they were okay with that. Luminus nodded, thankfully, and said that she hadn't attended the last one because she had a bad feeling about it. But that wasn't the only reason. Her own team of cooks produced delicacies similar in quality to what they found over there, and eating was already optional for her. One simply got bored of it over time. She continued that they had rare and uncommon spirits here, and given how Veldora was already licking his lips, calling him that lizard, she must have a lot to look forward to. An elderly servant of Luminus interjected and asked her if she didn't feel that was too careless of her, calling her Lady Luminus. He was elderly, strictly in terms of outward appearance. He had extraordinarily good posture, and from the general aura he presented, Rimuru could tell this wasn't some guy off the street. This servant was more comparable to Louie, standing adjacent. Luminus gave this servant a dissatisfied look and asked him back why he insisted on opening his mouth constantly, calling him Gunther. This was exactly why Luminus didn't want to take him. Gunther replied that it was his duty, calling her his lady. Luminus told Gunther to stop talking more about it, because Rimuru seemed like a sensible person to her. She wasn't about to settle things with Veldora right here, and there's nothing Gunther needed to worry about. Gunther tried to speak more, but Luminus immediately shut him down and told him that Gunther had no right to boss around the Demon Lord as old as she was. Luminus then ordered him to go back ahead of her. Gunther gave a tired sigh to this show of force from his master, but he couldn't defy her. After a few moments of thought, he carried out her orders. Gunther said that he would return now. In that case, Luminus smiled and said very good. She thanked Gunther but told him that he worried far too much, when in fact, they had Louie and Hinata here. Gunther replied that he couldn't help but worry about her princess. He looked at Louie and told him that he left Luminus in his hands. Louie replied understood. Louie wasn't too enthused about this either. His expression didn't change, but Rimuru could sense it anyway. Maybe Luminus was in the habit of using and abusing them both on a regular basis. Or at least, that's what the conversation suggested to Rimuru. Regardless, Gunther vanished the moment he heard Louis's reply. Once she was sure Gunther was gone, Luminus brightened up. She grinned and said, now that she had swatted that bothersome gnat away, they had a party to enjoy. Thus, Hinata and everyone under her on hand was joining the feast, whether they wanted to or not. Nobody dared voice any disagreement, and nobody was foolish enough to rile Luminus. That was how spectacular her fight with Veldora had been, really. It might have been a little light sparring from their perspective, but if any of the paladins got too close, it would have spelled disaster for them. It's a good thing Rimuru was around to stop them just now, or the fallout around town would have been catastrophic. Some of them had turned pale, contemplating what they just narrowly avoided, while others hadn't even realized the gravity of it all yet. Which, if you were a paladin, today's myriad of events must have been mind-blowing. Rimuru's battle with Hinata was superhuman enough as it was, but then they extinguished the 7 days clergy, and then they found out that the god they worshipped all along was a demon lord. Then, to cap it off, the Veldora fight. It seemed to Rimuru that their faith in Hinata was the only thing that allowed them to keep it together. But this would take time for them to fully accept. Rimuru asked everybody to relax for today. Rigurd, perhaps picking up on this, clapped his hands a few times and began barking out orders, sending the townspeople around him, scurrying in all directions. Some collected everyone's horses. Some approached the paladins to accept their weapons and armor. Some gave out potions to the wounded. And Rimuru guessed that the paladins really did believe in Hinata, because once she handed her gear over, the rest all followed. Some were even trying out a recovery potion, acting shocked at the results. Rimuru thought this was going to be harder for some reason, but this was actually pretty chill. Since it would be some time before the meal was ready, Rimuru invited the paladins to take a bath first, to take the grime off their bodies. He explained that they had rooms prepared for all of them to feel free to relax as well. The paladins didn't seem to understand what any of that meant. Rimuru knew that the people of Inglesia were in the habit of bathing regularly. Rimuru thought the words used were all familiar to them. Hinata's team members were using inns along the way, apparently, and they all definitely had baths. Perhaps they never imagined monsters wanting a dip now and then too. Rimuru was confident that they would be amazed, because the baths they had here would beat anything they'd see in their capital. It was really more of a hot spring, in fact, and Rimuru had everything from a large pool-like room to private open-air baths. Just like a hot spring resort town back in Japan, Rimuru had all kinds of different types to try out. It made for killer advertising, and besides, it just felt good when you're all tired out. They would also need some new clothes to change into. The simple gear under their armor was battered and torn, a hopeless mess after all the fighting they'd been through. A change of clothes should be good PR too, Rimuru thought. And they had just developed some of the hemp-based jinbei, shirt and shorts outfits. They had the more kimono-like yukata for the women too, available in a pretty broad color selection. Haruna told Rimuru with a grin not to worry, because Lady Shuna was already underway with preparations. Rimuru guessed he had nothing to worry about. Rimuru invited everyone to enjoy their baths, the pride of their nation. He told them that the water was all pumped in from a natural spring, and he guaranteed that they would find it rejuvenating. It would do absolute wonders for their skin too. The salesman side of Rimuru was in full swing. Luminus swiftly took the bait and said that it must be fascinating, and she imagined that Rimuru must have saved his finest private bath chamber for her. And then Rimuru remembered, in the Dwarven Kingdom, as advanced as their tech was, personal steam baths were the common custom. They didn't have bathhouses meant for use by great numbers of people at once. Inglesia had public facilities like that, but Blue Moon didn't. If the common people wanted to keep clean, after all, there were household magic spells for that. No water required. Every town had people who would cast them on you for a nominal fee. What all this meant was that, in this world, there's no common, unified custom of drawing a bath and just soaking in it for a while. A private bath was a grand luxury, something that would only be possessed by the upper class, and even then, only in nations with a large population of otherworlders. Rimuru kept forgetting that, given how his home nation installed baths even in one-bedroom apartments. Luminus must have been anticipating some nobleman's grandiose gilded chamber of delights, but Rimuru was going to have to disappoint her. There was no telling how angry she would be if Rimuru just guided her to their regular baths without explanation. Rimuru decided to address her misconceptions before anything else. Rimuru clarified that they had baths that everyone could go in, separated by gender. But there's also a mixed bath, if that's more of what Luminus was into. Rimuru thought that would have been enough, but others reacted before her. Rimuru grinned when he saw that Arnau and the other male paladins had stars in their eyes. He must have piqued their curiosity. That's it for this video, guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you will never miss the upcoming continuation of Tensura's spoiler video series. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the top 10 commenters on my previous video. Shout out to Joji Ray, Song Jinwoo, Rival Sakilin, Yuki-chan, Rishabh Gupta 045, J Money, Anime World, Abdul Fatawu, Bananded, Jonathan Bercasio, Derek Halstead, Nevea Jane, Peter Shuri, Admiral Rob, Super Omega Prime MK2, and last but not the least, shout out to Commander Neo. I'll see you guys in the next video.